Welcome to episode 126 of Stageworthy. I'm your host, Phil Rickaby. Stageworthy is a podcast about people in Canadian theatre featuring conversations with actors, directors, playwrights, and more. You know, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, I'd like to remind you again that subscribing is the best way to make sure that you never miss an episode of Stageworthy. And subscribing is easy. Just go to Apple Podcasts or Google Music and search for Stageworthy and click on the subscribe button. You can also find links directly to both Google and Apple on the Stageworthy website, and that'll take you right to where you can click the subscribe button. If you want to drop me a line, I would love to hear from you. You can find Stageworthy on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at StageworthyPod, and you can find the website at stageworthypodcast.com. If you want to drop me a line, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Phil Rickaby, and my website is philrickaby.com. My guest this week is playwright, storyteller, and performer Carlyn Rhamey. Carlyn will be taking her solo show, The ADHD Project, to the 2018 editions of the London, Edmonton, Victoria, and Vancouver Fringe Festivals. What have you been filling your time with? I mean, you're busy, so what have you been filling your time with?
Yeah, I'm in like 2 playwriting groups in Hamilton.
Oh, shit.
I moved to Hamilton in the fall.
Okay.
Which has been great. And so I'm doing a women's playwriting group, and I'm developing a solo show of that with character mask.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated with that because I have an idea for something that I think will be mask-based as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's fun. I got a friend of mine lent me some masks. I've been playing with them. They're not quite right, but I signed up for a workshop that's literally in between. It's my 1 week off pretty much in the summer. I filled it with a mask making workshop at Stratford.
Like you do.
That I can't afford. So I filled it with that. Because I'm going to be doing a short workshop of it at the Mental Health Festival in Hamilton, and then I'll be doing a full workshop presentation of the full show instead of just a piece of it in September when I come back. So that's that, and then with the other group I've been working on the newer show, which is called Scaredy Cat for the Hamilton Fringe.
Are you doing that this Fringe?
Yeah.
Okay, so I need to, because you're doing the ADHD project in, where are you doing that?
I'm doing that one in London, Edmonton, Victoria, and Vancouver.
Okay.
And then I'm going into the Prologue for the Arts thing to do it in schools in the fall. And Scaredy Cat is just in Hamilton.
Okay.
And then the other stuff is just little pieces.
That's a lot. That's a lot of solo to keep in your head.
Yeah, it is. And then and I debated whether or not the one script with the character mask. I was like, is this a solo show? I don't know. And so I ended up writing it being open. You could do it as one, or if an ensemble wanted to do it,
sure. I
wrote it with enough detail and freedom in it. I think that a group could do it. And I like that part of it, but I think I'll attempt to do it as a solo show just because I know the characters. It's all characters in a group home. Okay. And I know all the characters personally.
I'm curious, what is it that draws you to solo performance?
The solo performance specifically. Well, I think when it started, it was that's what I saw at my first storytelling show was solo, and just seeing someone command the stage with all 110% energy, and not needing anyone else to tell a story. I think is interesting. That kind of minimalist thing.
Yeah, one of the things that I found from doing The Commandment, because it was my first solo show, was how addictive it is to be the person commanding an audience. Yeah. That is...
Because once you know you can do it...
Oh, shit. And there's really nothing like it to be like, oh, I can take these people on a journey, and it's me taking them on the journey.
Yeah.
You know?
And there's a special, like, intimate connection with the audience that you get when it's just you, and when you're talking directly to them. I think.
Yes. Yeah.
Thing. Yeah.
And I think that's sort of like one of the tricks to making a solo play work is treating the audience like your scene partner.
Yeah. Exactly.
I have seen people who don't seem to do that, and I always feel a little bit disconnected. I always feel like, why am I here?
Yeah.
You know, but if they talk to me instead of at me, then I'm totally drawn in.
Yeah.
So your first solo play was SAOR.
SAOR, yes.
Yes, which I think I pronounced correctly.
Yes.
Which I think most people say SAOR because we transpose the A and O.
Yes.
And what
are we recording now?
Yeah.
That's so funny. I didn't even know.
Yeah. If you'd been like, you know what, I hate this fucking guy, you know, I would have been like, okay, so I'll be cutting that out. You know? But
it's fine.
I do prefer to like treat it like a conversation.
Yeah. This is great. It just clicked in now when you brought up Sarah. I was like, wait.
Yeah. So SAOR is like a story. Like your story. Mm-hmm. And it's about a journey that you took after like looking for, like, could you just describe SAOR for me?
Yeah. So I went traveling through Ireland, Scotland, and England on my own for the very first time. There's a particular reason why I went there, and before I left, I found out I got into the CAFF Fringe lottery.
Okay.
And I didn't have a show.
So you entered the CAFF lottery without anything?
With nothing. I didn't. People told me it was going to take 10 years to get it, and I got it on my first thing, which made people,
of course,
angry. But So I literally got in and then left. I think I left for the trip like a week later, and it was 7 weeks, and came back and wrote. I knew I wanted to write storytelling. I wanted to write something that was true and from my life, and I hoped I would get something from the trip, and I ended up writing. Most of it is adventures and the people I met on the trip, but it's also why I went there, and what happened to get me to that point to go somewhere on my own for the first time.
Well, I'm so glad that actually something happened while you were on the trip to give you a show. Because that would have been like, you would come back and be like, fuck, what do I do?
Yeah, I was wondering about that too, but luckily, I think for anyone when you travel on your first time, like anything that...
Oh, there are definitely stories, yes. Yeah.
And with me, that's like the law of my life.
The law of your life is that shit happens?
Shit, yes. This is what the ADHD project is about.
What is it that made you want to write about your ADHD? And obviously it's about ADHD and having it, but how did that come about?
Yeah, I think I always wanted to write about that, especially after I went back to school for educational assistant special needs support, to work with children and also special needs, which is my other passion. And after going through that, my brain started to blend that aspect with theater, and I knew I wanted to write tell my story with ADHD and growing up with that, and being in a segregated classroom, and how that all worked out. And some things happened when I was in college, kind of learning about my diagnosis, and I wanted to talk about that. And I ended up doing SAOR first as my first one, because I knew this one was the important one, and I wanted to make sure I had my feet wet before I dove into
yeah. Were you were diagnosed with ADHD when you were a kid?
7, yeah.
When you were 7. I don't know if they still do it, but they put you in a special needs class at that point, or did they?
Yeah. So it was a segregated classroom for grades 3 and 4, and then integrated after that. So you do like half the day with a group of 6 kids, and the other half with everybody else.
Sure. Was it difficult to go back and forth between the two? Did they? Did other kids like make fun of you or something like?
Yeah. I talk a little bit about it in the show, actually. Just how, like, I have a line where it's, if kids sense something weird or different about you in any way, they'll either attack or pretend you don't exist.
Yes,
type of thing. Yeah. And it's so true to my experience and for other people that have come to chat with me after the show.
Sure.
You get the label, and that's great because you get the resources you need, and with a label sometimes can come compassion from people who are educated.
Yeah.
But with a label comes all the other stereotypes and stigma as well, and so it's a bitter-edged sword or double-edged sword.
Double-edged sword.
Yeah.
I mean, I take it that the kids. Did you find that most kids were on the attack or on the ignore?
For me, it was a bit of a blend, but a lot of the ignore.
Really?
Yeah, just that whole aspect of excluding growing up in that way. I think I only had one good friend in elementary school in my class.
Were you medicated at that point, or were you?
Yes. Yeah. I was on meds from age 7 all the way up until I went away to college and couldn't remember to take them anymore. So that's how I got off meds.
And what happened when you went off the meds?
It's hard to tell. I mean, theater has always been something that made me focus. So even when I told my parents, I'm not remembering to take them every day, so I'm just going to stop, they weren't concerned because theater was the one thing that I hyper-focus on.
Sure.
Other things like disorganization and forgetfulness, all those other symptoms, I do wonder if meds would help with that, because I still struggle with it today so much.
You may not be alone there. It might not be an ADHD thing. It might just be just a artist thing. Yeah. So you decided that this was like, you knew that you ultimately wanted to write this show. Yeah, your feet wet with SAOR. By the way, when you were traveling with SAOR, what was like? Did you find that there was a difference between your expectation of performing and what actually happened? Like, what was your expectation of Fringe versus your actual experience?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I didn't expect to be as nervous as I was to perform something deeply personal. I had that little moment right before, and with ADHD Project too, which was surprising, where you think, I cannot go up and say this in front of people who know me and people who don't. And
was that just the first time you performed it, or was it?
Yeah, it was like right before. But once you kind of say like, wow, fuck it.
Yes.
that goes away pretty quickly. I think for SAOR especially, it was crazy how many people related to the show. It was, it was personal. It was about a breakup. It was about traveling on your own, but all like pretty standard, standard stories that I think. So while I thought, this is going to be something that people have heard before, it being something that people have heard before means that they can relate to it. Or not heard before, but they've experienced it. So so many people came up to me after and said, like, I helped them through, the ending of a long friendship that they had, or the ending of a relationship that they just had, or so they just booked their ticket, or they're going to go book their ticket now to go do it. And I did not expect that. And I think that comes also with, like, it comes with all theater, but especially solo work and storytelling. When you open up something.
When you connect with people.
Yeah, and you connect with people.
Yeah.
They really feel it, and they want to come up and talk with you about it.
That, I think, is one of the interesting things about connecting with an audience in a solo play, as opposed to any other kind of play. People, in my experience, really want to share with you what touched them and what affected them in your performance in a way that I haven't seen happen with other shows.
Yeah. Yeah, especially with ADHD Project. I went in, the first performance of it was at In the Soil, just a workshop. The first time I ever performed it, and no one had seen it. My director hadn't come on yet. Like, it was freshly after.
Because you did the my writer's retreat, and then you were like doing it like that like at a weekend.
It was fresh out of the writer's retreat. This is what I'd put together. I had like the script cleverly like played out on the stage, like the titles of each story in a row. So I had a little cheat sheet, and I went into it being like, hey, you know, actors and performers, you have to learn from failure. This is just going to be a failure, and that's just what it's going to be.
Yeah.
And I did it, and I had no idea how it was going throughout, and I just got through it, and at the end, everyone but my parents stood up, and every single person in that room came to talk to me, and it was crazy, but it was needed. After that, I walked away knowing like, okay, this story has value, and not only does it have value, but people need it. So many people with Asperger's were in the audience that night, also ADHD, other mental health issues. They came up and said, I've never seen someone tell a piece of my story on stage.
Yeah.
So after that, it was like, okay, now I'm doing it. I'm telling my story for other people, which kind of upped the stakes.
That elevates it a bit.
Yeah.
When you were doing, when we were in Hamilton together, and you were doing SAOR, I was pretty impressed with your ability to just talk to people about your show. As an introvert, I have difficulty doing that. I'm like, I see a crowd of people, I see a line, and now I have to go over here and sit with my head between my knees for a good few minutes and work myself up. Did you plan how you were going to promote the show to people, or did it just come naturally to you?
It's funny that you say that, actually, because Hamilton was the 5th stop on a like overlapping tour. I did London, Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, Hamilton.
Oh shit! And Montreal and Ottawa overlap,
and it overlapped with London too a little bit that year.
Okay,
so I mean, I barely flyered, I think, until I got to Toronto.
Really?
So that's 3 fringes in. I was so nervous. I was head between my knees to like, I don't know how to approach someone. And by Hamilton, and SAOR was incredibly hard to pitch too. I mean, even the title is Irish for free. So it's not even in English.
Sure.
And it's hard to explain that without giving it away.
Sure.
Too. I found last year finally got like a pitch down for Edmonton and Vancouver that I could use. But in Hamilton, I was just, I found I had to just have a conversation with someone to end up telling them about my show and selling them on it. I am terrible at the 10-second pitch. Like, I have to talk to someone for at least 5 minutes.
That's funny, because my perception was that, damn, Carlyn really has her shit together as far as promoting her show goes. Do you?
Maybe I was just hyped up the last one, so I had to give my all.
Do you identify as do you think of yourself as an introvert or as an extrovert, or a combination of the two?
Yeah, I think a combination of the two. I think everyone is a combination of the two in a way. Like, I think I sent you this before, the Myers-Briggs personality test thing, which I found really helpful. That said I was an ENFP, and then my friend got me a book on it, which has been great. So basically, I get, and it's totally true for me, I get energy from other people, which is wonderful, but then I don't process my experiences until I'm alone, which is so true. Because once I get back home after like a crazy social event or being outside all day and running around doing things. I get home and sometimes I just sit for a minute and think or meditate or just sit with my thoughts and that's what I'm doing. I'm literally processing everything that has just happened. So I think that's it's more a little bit more of both, I guess.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Probably more extroverted.
Well, I mean, the fact that from what I saw, your abilities are to just engage people in conversation, whereas I was like, okay, now I'm going to look somebody in the eye and talk about my show. There's so much effort involved in doing that. But you went to Edmonton. Mm-hmm. Was it your first time at the Edmonton Fringe? How was that?
It's great. I love Edmonton. Phil, I love it.
It's funny because it is the one Fringe that I could think of in Canada that scares the shit out of me. And I've done it. But it still is just so massive.
And I was definitely scared going into it. But there's no other Fringe where you can start selling tickets before you even land in the province.
That is so true, yes.
Like, just that, knowing that, like, I could, like, I'm going to break even and not worry about it was a great feeling. I mean, I'm doing a Bring Your Own Venue this year in Edmonton, so that's going to be a whole nother piece.
Yes.
But,
are you doing it at the French school?
No, I'm doing, what's it called? Roots on White.
Okay.
It's right outside the hub. So it's a great, it's around everything, which is great.
Cool. And did you do Steel Wheels? Did you?
Yeah. I bought pizza there and soup and beer.
You ate there?
I ate there.
Wow.
A lot of us ate there.
Okay. I think I only ate there once, and it wasn't bad. It was just like, it wasn't my choice, my preferred eating place.
It definitely wasn't my preferred eating place. They had some sort of spicy ramen soup, though, last year. That was super good. So I did eat that quite a few times. Edmonton, it's just so great because there's an audience there, so you can work and you can flyer hard before your show and get a good crowd.
I mean, that is one of the things that I really liked about both Edmonton and Winnipeg was the fact that Fringe is this enclosed area, and everybody who's in that area is there for Fringe, and so you don't have to wait for people to line up. In fact, in Edmonton, they almost don't line up because they don't have to line up for tickets, but they're in that area, and so you can just flyer people there.
Go around, you don't have to explain what Fringe is.
Yes, which you have to do in most other places, unless they're already lined up for a show. So now you've done the ADHD project a couple of times, and
Ottawa and Hamilton.
Yeah. And so now you're going to be taking it to a bunch of other fringes.
Yes.
After you did that initial performance after the writers' retreat, how much did it change?
Right after that, it changed a little bit because my director came on, John Patterson, and
did he see the?
He didn't see it. No. He's actually never seen it.
Oh, really?
No.
How? Explain how he directs it without ever seeing it.
Well, he's seen it. Like, he's seen the show. He's rehearsed with me. He's never seen it perform. Like,
okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
He will this summer though. So he came on and helped with dramaturgy. You need one more story about this. We need less of that. And directed a lot of the character work with me because I do some characters in the show. But mostly like little tweaks here and there and tightening things. I worked more on it this past year, getting it ready for schools, and then this Fringe, we're adding in a whole different element. We're going to use a projector to project actual video footage from my childhood.
Okay.
So that'll change it up a lot, and I think we wanted to do it last year. We just ran out of time, and I think that will put it where it needs to be.
That's a lot of changing over time.
It's grown a lot, and it changes with every. I'm the kind of person I need to do the show in front of an audience to really get the changes in there and to figure out what's working and what's not. So it's hard for me to kind of go back into a room and like work on a script and then come back. So, I mean, doing it in Ottawa and Hamilton was super helpful. And now starting to do it in the schools has been really good too.
So you sort of change things as you go?
Yeah.
So if somebody had seen SAOR in London and then saw it in Hamilton, would it have been...
It would have been fairly different.
Oh, really?
Yeah, especially SAOR, because SAOR started very much like... This is a play and this is a play, but it's storytelling about my life. And then by the time Hamilton hit, I was out there when people were coming in. I asked questions to the audience. It was way more of a storytelling, relaxed atmosphere. We kind of took away some of the theatrics as well. But that's when I was still playing with that hybrid of a genre.
Sure.
And ADHD Project, even people have told me they've seen it twice. They saw it in the soil, and then they saw it in Hamilton. And every time I do it, it kind of changes. There's no there's a set script, but I hit each story usually with each show. But it's very much a conversation, like we were saying before. It's very much a loose conversation with the audience. Yeah.
Is there much tech? Because if it changes a whole lot, it's got to be hard on a technician.
Yeah, I think all my shows are hard on a technician. I SM'd a show for the first time this year, and so now I understand what I've done the last 2 years. I need to do some apologies. Yeah. So I have right now I have no tech. I had tech in Ottawa. And then I did a bring your own venue, so I just didn't bring in a tech for Hamilton last year. So it works either way. I mean, I do it in classrooms and libraries for kids, so it doesn't need any tech. But now that we're adding the projection elements, things will need to be...
Now there needs to be some...
Yeah, a little bit more hammered down. At the very least, certain lines will need to be hammered down.
Yeah. You certainly won't be able to say, here's the script, it's not going to change.
Yeah, sometimes I go back and read my scripts if I've just submitted to some sort of playwriting contest or storytelling festival, and I go through just to make sure it's all updated, and I'm like, what is this from? Like, this whole piece is... I haven't been doing this since the start. Yeah. Like, it's a whole different show, and I can't believe I handed that to my technicians.
Well, what's kind of interesting, like, I did sort of like a polish on the script after Hamilton for the commandment. And I kind of went through and was like, do I still say it like this? No, I don't. And I went from start to finish. I kind of like recited and typed at the same time. And came to the conclusion that, I had overwritten sections and I sort of economized, but it was essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
And only afterwards I sort of added like one chunk at the end.
Yes. It's the sitting down and doing it that's hard for me because especially ADHD Project, I only had there was no script. It was all, the stories were point form written down, and then I practiced telling them.
Yeah. Well, when you were at the writer's retreat, I think at the end it was like, you sort of like had an outline and you were like, well, that's all the time I have.
That's good. Yep. Yeah. I mean, I had some paragraphs written as text, and then other parts, were a lot of point form, and I never go back to once I start practicing on my feet and just telling the story, I will maybe go back and look at the script once or twice, but I'll just kind of leave it.
Sure.
So when I needed a full script to give to Ottawa, I was actually doing a lot of speech to text because I just couldn't. I mean, the ADHD really affects in this case. Like I sitting down and typing something out that I already have memorized is physically painful.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I tried for a long time, and finally I just had to do speech to text. So I was walking around the streets outside to not get bored, saying my show into my phone and doing a speech to text thing to get the script out.
Cool.
Yeah.
When did you start writing? Like, just in general, like, when did you start writing? And when did you start writing theater and doing it?
Well...
To ask a massive question.
Yeah. We did a little bit of creative writing with the wonderful Maya Ardell when I was in school, who does great exercises for creative writing, and she does workshops too. And that kind of opened my eyes to it, because up until that point, that was in my last year, I hadn't really thought about writing my own work, and then I really, really enjoyed that course in school. But I kind of just left it until two other graduates and I did our first Fringe show. We did a collective creation, the three of us, which was a lot of storytelling bits and made up clowny bits. It was really weird. I almost wish I filmed it so I could go back and look at it and just try and hide my face. I did an interpretive dance piece, and I don't dance. Like a lot of things. We basically wanted to like just try everything we've always wanted to try and never did. Okay. And that was our first Fringe show. But we wrote a lot for that, and that was kind of my first trial, I guess, with it. And then after that, I attempted to write a solo show for years and finally found storytelling, and that I could see the end point of storytelling. I was like, well, I know the ending to all my stories, so it's easier than writing a fiction play. Yeah. And then I latched onto it and fell in love with it.
What was it that made you want to do a solo play?
I think it came back to like I saw a show at the Fringe, a solo show, and it was just so jam-packed with energy, and I was so captivated from start to finish, which is a rarity for me. ADHD. Yeah. and I think for a lot of people too nowadays, like, so many people can't sit for more than 60 minutes anymore, right? Sure. So this show just captured my attention from start to finish, and it was so energetic and so fun, and it was a solo storytelling show. And it was cool to see someone be able to be themselves and all their silliness and crazy hyperness on stage. And I saw basically I think you get inspired by these things by seeing yourself on stage. Sure. I saw something that reflected me, and so that pushed me to do it.
Do you remember what the show was?
Yeah, I think we talked about it actually in the last time I was here. It was The Show Must Go On, Jeff Laird's show. Okay. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, and then I saw, and so that inspired me to start writing a solo show. And then when I saw Sam Mullen's show, who's a great storyteller on the circuit, I was like, oh yeah, you can also just stand there and tell a story and keep an audience too. So
was that Tinfoil Dinosaur, or was that
was a newer one?
Untitled Sam Mullen.
Yeah. He just did 4 stories and just stood up there and told them, and it was fantastic. So I think it was like over the years, there's a collection of like seeing these shows and seeing people be able to command an audience with so much energy and be themselves on stage, and then again just share something from their life that could be the simplest thing, but it creates that lovely connection with the audience.
Yeah, I wanted to write a solo show before I even saw one, because I read one.
Here, let's enter it.
Same author.
Oh no, sorry,
Danny McIver. It was Danny McIver, and it was Wild Abandoned.
Oh yeah.
Followed by House. And from the moment I looked at those, I was like, I can tell that this is amazing to watch. I was right when I finally got to see him perform it. That yes, it's amazing to watch, and I was like, I need to do this. Yeah. And eventually, it only took me 8 years of writing to do it. But what is it that called you into theater? You said that it was like, how did you find out that theater is what allows you to hyper focus?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I have this in the ADHD project. The first play I ever did was in my grade 7 drama class, and I got to play Dopey in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which was the role I wanted, very exciting. And that was kind of the first time where I realized like I can make people laugh. And Adobe's a super silly character and I had the best time playing it. And at that point, I wasn't able to be myself among my classmates. Okay. It was I was very, very introverted because if I broke out of that in any way, I would be called hyper or special and not in a nice way.
Yeah.
So being able to do theater was me being able to be myself for the first time. So from there, it just snowballed. Yeah.
You were introverted as a child, and when did you
in certain places?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was at home. I was like many kids. I was outgoing and loud, and my parents wondered how I learned anything at school because I was always talking. And then when they found out by talking, like I think it was in grade 1, and they worried that my teacher would be like, Phil just won't shut up. And the teacher was like, he's so quiet. And my parents were like, who's this child at home? And so, I mean, there's context. So were you like a chatterbox at home and like at school because of circumstances introverted or?
Yeah, I was pretty wild outside of school. I think I like tried to sit on that energy all day long. I did an after school program with the YMCA. It was a leader corps program, and I would get there and be bouncing off the walls. So, and I think part of that's just me and the meds wearing off at the end of the day. But I think part of it's too is trying to sit on it all day long at school. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you were in theater school and you were not taking your meds, how did that affect your theater school experience?
Well, even in high school, and once high school hit and I was outside of that one group of people, I was pretty crazy. Yeah. I'd like to think I've simmered down in my old age. But yeah, as soon as high school hit, I was just so energetic, always like bouncing around. And theater school started that way too. And then there's a need for stillness and calm too with that. And I think it helped with that.
How did you find the stillness and calm?
That's a daily struggle. It's still something that I am always trying different things to reach. But I mean, in theater school, at least, they're just the way that it was Fanshawe College, the way that their theater program was kind of set up was, at least the first year, they gave you a lot of time, basically. So we had classes, like voice classes, where we'd have a 2-hour class and we'd just be focusing on our breathing.
Okay.
And part of that was torturous for...
I can imagine.
Me at 17. But finding those classes where we're meditating or we're taking in the room and knowing why we're doing that. We're doing this to be grounded and ready or present, or we're doing this to connect with everyone. A big thing was, if you're doing an ensemble piece, you want to be part of the ensemble and not standing out on your own, and that whole realization too.
So knowing why you were doing it really helped to.
Yeah, and I knew it all was. I knew I never didn't want to try anything.
Sure.
It obviously some exercises I knew were going to be more of a struggle than others, but I loved theater and I wanted to be a performer. So I'm very goal oriented. So everything was a challenge that I wanted to tackle, whether it was being still and silent or the opposite.
Did you find that once you were in theater school that you'd found like your people? Were you in the place that you felt like you didn't have before, or did you find that in high school? Public school.
I found it in high school. We had a great arts program, and my drama teacher, I had known her for years. She was the mother, actually, of my best friend growing up, and she was a wonderful mentor to me and put on these big productions. And it was a school where the football players, all the top football players, were in the musical.
Oh shit! Okay.
Dressed up like sailors. Like, it was
nice.
Yeah, theater was definitely the cool thing to do. So it was great because there was no backlash for me being myself in that environment, and people were really accepting and inclusive. And in theater school, even it just kind of enhanced from there, right? You find people that you can sit down and have a beer with and talk, about what you love and shows that you've seen and how that striked you. And I think it's always great when you're talking to another theater person. Because they know the work that goes into doing all those things. And you can talk about, the work that you're doing and how that inspired that. And just those conversations are always the best.
Yeah. A couple of times you've mentioned when you're able to be yourself. And are you in a place now where were you like in theater school, you were able to be yourself for most of the time, or did you have to rein it in a lot?
I mean, there's also, I think theater school for sure, I was able to just be me. But there's also that element of, what's me and what's my ADHD making me impulsive or hyper or scattered. So when I think of like sitting still or meditating or anything like that, I don't think that's not me. I just think it's difficult because of the way that my brain is. I don't think I'm not being me when I have to do those things, especially in an art form, but they're just more challenging.
Was finding the difference between you and your ADHD a difficult thing to do?
It's kind of a new thing for me, actually. Okay. Yeah, after I went back to school to do educational assistant special needs support, I kind of turned my focus to ADHD and to learn more about my diagnosis. And I learned, about symptoms that I didn't even know were symptoms of my ADHD. And especially about being an adult, because it manifests differently in a child than an adult. Your strengths and weaknesses can even be different in both. So that whole experience kind of made me reflect, and I'm still reflecting on that. And I think often, like, what is me and what is that? And because, if I mess up, if I forget a deadline or I miss a bus or any time, to a certain extent, I know I need to give myself a break, because that's where the ADHD is coming in and affecting my organizational skills. But then, when is it not ADHD and when it's you being lazy and not being prepared, or, so you kind of have to find that balance for you. I mean, I know I have systems in place and tools that I use to stay on top of things. And sometimes those fail, and I no longer blame myself for that, because I know there's other things.
I think a lot of people sometimes would give themselves a pass and be like, oh, well, I missed the deadline because, ADHD, and not hold themselves accountable, because, deadlines are deadlines, and sometimes you have no choice but to make them. And so you have to find a way to do that. So it can go, that's the thing, it can go either way, right? Yes, yeah. You can be like, you can use, like anything else, you can use your label or your excuse, whatever it is, you can use that to, as an excuse for everything. Or you can not recognize that and be way too hard on yourself for something that you cannot control.
I have a lot of tools and strategies that I use that I've built. I've got my diagnosis at 7. Like, my weaknesses have been the same since I was 7. The tools have changed, obviously. Yeah. But I've known them since then. So I've had a lot of time to try and find the best system that works for me. But I also know that no matter how hard I try, I'll never be an organized person. I'll never have it all together, and that's okay. I have the strategies to get me as close to everyone else as I can. But I also can't I can't keep putting myself down for things that are outside of my control.
As somebody who's producing their own theater, what is the biggest challenge of aside from just organization?
Yeah.
Like what's the challenge, and how do you manage to get things done?
Yeah, it's been a bit, and I produced a show and stage managed it this year that I wasn't in, so that was an interesting new thing. Because it's kind of like producing is kind of the opposite for any artist. Like, it's a different hat. You have to switch your brain. And
they don't often teach us anything about that in theater school.
They don't. They teach you nothing.
Yeah.
About self-producing. But when you have something that's affecting your organizational skills and kind of make you more forgetful or distractible, producing is always a challenge. And again, it was a new thing when I started. I self-produced SAOR, the first show, and it was a big learning curve. I had a mentor that helped me through a lot of the fringe stuff. Yeah. And then going outside of that, it's a lot of asking for help when you need it. And for me, I find of producing, I just take longer to do things that other people than other people. An application can take me 2 24-hour days, and it's time a lot. Like this year, because I knew I wanted to produce and write and create a lot more, I moved to Hamilton, and I went down to only working part-time. So I'm full-time. I tallied up all my hours a month ago about how many hours I put into producing and art. Yeah. And it's anywhere between 30 and 50 hours a week.
Nice. Well,
I had one good moment of, I'm a full-time artist, and then, oh my god, I'm not being paid for any of this. Quickly followed after. Yeah. But that's also just me taking way longer than the average person to do some of the simplest things. And that's part organization, that's part getting distracted. Sometimes I can read a question on a form, and I literally read it 15 times, and then I'm like, oh, okay, no, I got it. I just I start thinking about something else while I'm reading it, or I looking at something else, and suddenly I didn't absorb the information. Yeah. And it's what a lot of people experience, but this is it every single time for me.
Now, to be fair, in some of those forms, the questions are not particularly straightforwardly written. It's like a lawyer sat down and some of these things and thought, what's the most difficult way, but specific, that I could say this?
It's so true, while keeping it broad.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, it's not always easy. Some are definitely more difficult than others. But producing's been a huge learning curve, but I do think I have a somewhat handle on it now.
Yeah. Well, so why the move to Hamilton? You were in London? Niagara?
Welland, Ontario. That's why the move to Hamilton. Okay.
From Welland to the big city of Hamilton. Yeah.
I lived in London. I went to school there, and I lived there to do a show for a few months. Mm-hmm. I spent 8 months in Toronto. Yeah. I lived in around Niagara. And after doing SAOR in the Hamilton Fringe, I did the Hamilton Fringe Alert program, which is a producing program.
Yes. Yeah.
For artists. And we helped produce the 2017 Frostbites Festival. And every time we had a meeting, which was like once or twice a month, we'd all go out after, or we'd see a show together. And I kind of got to know Hamilton through doing SAOR in the Fringe and then doing this program for 8 months. Yeah. And I just fell in love with the city. It's so vibrant. There's so much theater happening. Last night I got to do a story with the Hamilton 7, which is this amazing storytelling group that does a show every month. And they've all been doing it for years, and some of them have traveled all over the world doing it. And it was so great to be able to tell a story with such high caliber, wonderful people. And the city, with still having like so much going on and so many artists in the city, like every day I'm meeting someone who's moved from somewhere to be an artist in the city, which is so cool. It's still a sense of community. You see the same people at these events and the same audience members. I do a storytelling night and people tell me that they saw me in Fringe or another storytelling night, and that's really cool.
Certainly something we don't have in Toronto or some of the larger cities where...
Or it's more pockets in Toronto.
Yes. Yeah. I was going to say silos, but pockets is also like people get involved with particular groups, and those are the people that you associate with and things like that. So I definitely see the benefit of being able to have a community.
Yeah. And we have that too. Like you see, there's companies that will always use the same performers or do the same types of shows, and there's for sure that like any city with theater, but I do find they just have a lot going on. Like we have the Hamilton Festival this month, 10-minute play festival, and then the Mental Health Theater Festival in May, and I literally see a show or go to a theater event every week.
Nice.
And it's lovely.
Nice.
Yeah, it's just a great community.
So you're doing the ADHD project once again in what are the cities you're doing that in?
I'm doing it in London, Edmonton, Victoria, and Vancouver.
Have you done Victoria or Vancouver before?
I did Vancouver last year.
Okay.
Had a blast. I've never done Victoria.
Okay.
Victoria's the new one this year.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. And you're doing the brand new one, not quite written yet.
Yeah, it's getting there. It's getting there.
And it's called
Scaredy Cat. It's about everything that I'm afraid of, which is everything.
Okay.
But mostly my mom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does your mom know about this?
No,
yet?
It was kind of because I obviously take a long time to write these things. Like most people, I don't think no one's done their Fringe show right now at this point, right? We still have some. You're done.
I'm redoing one that I've already done. I just have to relearn it because it's been 2 years. But
reoccurring doesn't count.
Yeah.
But I realized recently, actually, I was writing this show, and each year my show has kind of had a message, and that just has happened organically. And but I found I really liked that aspect of my work, and I was writing the show and writing all these funny stories about being scared of everything as a kid, going into the ocean for the first time and bawling my eyes out and screaming. And I was like 16. And I realized though that there's not what's the message with this show, and then I went back and looked at all the stories, and my mom was in every single one of them, and the antagonist in every single one. So she doesn't know, because it was a new thing I've just discovered this week, that the show is gonna be, it's a lot of funny, scary kid stories, but it's definitely a mother-daughter show.
Do you think your mom will find it funny, or because you mentioned that when you did the ADHD project the first time, everybody stood up except your parents?
They did at the end.
Okay.
They're not theater people.
No. Okay.
So they didn't understand what people were doing.
Okay. How do you think your mom's going to being the antagonist of your show? And are you going to give her a heads up before she sees it?
I don't know. I really don't know. She refused to see SAOR. I wanted to do it in front of them 2 days before I opened, just so I'd done it in front of someone other than my director. And she refused to, because she said, if she doesn't like it or it sucks, I'll see it on her face and then she'll feel bad. So I wasn't allowed to do it for my parents before I performed it. So, I mean, she's so supportive. I mean, both my parents are my number one fans, and they come see everything. But she hates when I say that she's going to be in some of my stories.
Oh.
So I don't know how she's going to feel about it. But she will love it because it's me and I'm her daughter.
Yeah.
She has to.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes. I don't know. I'll probably give her a heads up that she's in stories. I'm not going to give her a heads up that it's about us because I'm worried that
you figure that she might be angry or
yeah. Unless she listens to this, in which case
cat's out of the bag.
Surprise, mom.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if worst comes to worst, I mean, after you perform it, you're gonna have like all kinds of extra stories about your mom and how she reacted to the show.
There'll be part 2.
Yeah, I mean, performing a show, like I know what you mean about wanting to perform it in front of people before you perform it in front of people,
like a workshop. Yeah.
I needed to perform the commandment in front of people. I was like, who are the most receptive of my friends who will allow me to perform this, and even if they hate it, will not necessarily show it on their face. Like, I needed people who were going to be like, who would be able to watch it and just be able to like be supportive,
be good audience
members, and not people who would be like, oh, when suddenly goes sour faced in the middle, and I'd be like, I can see you. This is just me talking to you. Yeah. Yeah. Is your mom's reaction to this something that you worry about?
I mean, like I said, this is a new discovery in here, so I haven't thought too much on it. I mean, it does make me nervous. Hence why I'm not positive that I'll tell her.
Sure.
Prior to her coming. She's a very private person, and I'm not revealing a bunch of things. I've wanted to talk about our relationship for a while because it's very we're complete opposites.
Sure.
And yet now we're best friends because I'm my dad. So of course, I tell her everything. But it took a long time of, World War III before getting there. And I think based off of, I'm workshopping this show with The Junction with Theatre Aquarius. So I read out the stories all the time to my little writing group. And just based from that, like, I'm not the only one who's had certain experiences with their mom like this. So that kind of gives me reassurance too, that I think it's important to sometimes talk about these awkward, conversations or experiences we have with our parents when we're still learning that they're actual people.
Yes.
Yeah. Because it goes both ways.
Sure. On the upside, after you do it in Hamilton, you get to run away to Edmonton and to the west to do the ADHD project for a while. So maybe,
that is true. After we go on a family vacation to our cottage up.
Oh shit! Okay, so that's maybe not quite as no.
So we'll see.
Okay, well we'll see.
It's gonna be an interesting summer.
Could be very interesting. Well, Carlyn, thank you so much for this. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really excited to be back.
This has been a Homebody Productions production.